a new career high.
The dream is alive for Houston. For the first time in 37 years, the Cougars are going to the Final Four.
Uzan gets it in, gets it back, and he puts it in!
Long one, James, knocked away, Kniffel, back outside, Proctor tosses it up. It's no good! The dream remains alive for the Houston Cougar.
Welcome to the Scott Holman Podcast, back here Tuesday, March 17th. Certainly not our first episode here in the month of March, but we are now, as we record this, Bobby, in the midst of NCAA tournament basketball. There's a first four game going on right now tonight as we sit and record. There's actual NCAA tournament men's basketball. We have Cougar men's basketball plenty, obviously. Big 12 tournament week that was, where the Cougars absolutely played themselves into a position that maybe a week or two ago we wouldn't have thought they'd even be. Though we know where the Cougars have ended up now. A game to talk about on Thursday night. Some general bracket thoughts as well. Tons of men's basketball. Tons of non-men's basketball as well. NCAA championships. Teams starting Big 12 season from the spring sports. So as always, plenty to talk about there around the athletic department as well. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Bobby, how are we doing?
Good, man. Like you said, it's the most wonderful time of the year. You have a team in Texas having to play in the first four. Couldn't be me. Couldn't
relatable,
be
honestly.
Here. Yeah. Couldn't. I don't know what that would feel like. That's so odd. I can't believe that a team in Texas would even be at a point where they would need to play in the first four. I can't imagine who that would be. It's got to be some program that doesn't have a lot of money, right?
I think it's an orange school in the University of Texas system. So I'm going to take a wild stab that it's UTEP, which, you know what, hasn't been the easiest last 15, 20 years from. So we'll give credit to, I'm sure the Miners playing NC State right now don't know, not watching us. I'm recording this podcast. You won't look into the matter any further. It's too dang hot. It's too dang hot where I live. It's too dang hot, at least periodically where you live. Like that's not great. And that is, I think, maybe my only complaint. Life right now.
Actually, I'm actually in a sweatshirt right now. We had a freeze warning on Monday morning, and we have a heat warning on Saturday. It is possibly going to hit 100. So, how Texas is it right now?
Extremely Texas. And before we get to the men's basketball, we'll mention very briefly patreon.com/shpodcast, patreon.com/shpodcast. If you both want to support the work that Bobby and I do, is the internet's longest running independent Houston Cougar sports podcast on a weekly basis. You want to get access to premium March Madness content. We did a little Big 12 premium preview a week or two ago, immediately before the Cougars were in KC. We have some premium March content to come. Hey, that sounds good to you? Little as $5 a month. Patreon.com/shpodcast. Starting with Cougar men's basketball, of course. It's time of the year where if your men's basketball team's in the tournament, chances are that's the lead story. It certainly is when we're talking about a team of the quality of Kelvin Sampson's Houston Cougar men's basketball program. But worth a quick setting of the table here as we kick off our talk tonight with the hoops. As you're listening on the eve of, or the day of, the 8th straight season where an NCAA tournament was held and the Houston Cougar men's basketball team under Kelvin Sampson has been a participant. Obviously, it's no longer a novelty among the fan base, and certainly inside the program, to be making the NCAA tournament. It's the expectation. And you build an elite program culture like the one Sampson's built here by making that level of year in, year out excellence be the standard if you're in the program. But we should all, as fans, at least give it a moment or two in the time prior to tip-off against Idaho on Thursday night to appreciate not just how great it is to be fans of a regularly in the NCAA tournament team, but not many fan bases can say their team is also an annual threat to make a deep run and even potentially be the last one standing the way the Cougs have been these last number of years. You don't need to spend too much time on it, but I would say to us all, present company included, worth a quick reflection on how fortunate we are that we get to watch the Cougs on a game in, game out basis. To the more immediate little picture happenings, though, we know the Cougs, as was kind of the pre-Big 12 tournament expectation, will be the 2 seed in the NCAA tournament's South region. If you have not already and want to hear our immediate reaction right after the bracket was revealed from Sunday and our earliest thoughts on our Thursday opponent in the bracket, one more plug for the episode immediately before this one, episode 1134. Don't worry, Bobby and I will just sit here and patiently wait while you do that. We're not going anywhere. And obviously, we'll have plenty of thoughts on those topics here tonight, but always enjoy the immediacy of reacting to those things live. In my biased opinion, it makes for good listening of the two of us. One thing we didn't do beyond talk about the results in the broadest strokes was talk about the Big 12 tournament. So we'll start here by digging a little bit on the Cougs' performance in the championships in Kansas City. As we talked about, Cougs got an unusually tough draw for getting the ostensible 10 seed in BYU in the opening quarterfinal game. A team in BYU that certainly had a share of bad losses down the stretch, but also a team with a future possible number 1 overall pick in AJ Debonsa, and at least by the numbers, an opponent that profiled a lot closer to being a top 25, top 30 team than your average 10 seed, even in a conference as good as the Big 12's tournament. And I would say this one was probably the most convincing BYU has looked against U of H now in its 4th try under second-year head coach Kevin Young against U of H. But like the regular season matchup in Provo, not going to say there weren't points where there was a little bit of nerves, Bobby, but not one down the stretch I was too concerned about the Cougs with 2 O's losing. Maybe a little concerned at that point where Alexei Kostic hit a 3 to cut the lead to 64-61 inside the final 2 minutes to play, but no surprise, next trip down, Kingston Flemings, he's done so many times, comes up with a big shot, really, I think, at that point. Put this game on ice, Bobby. I've talked plenty. Give me your thoughts from the quarterfinal win over BYU.
Yeah, I thought it was a good game for the Houston Cougars. Got into some foul trouble. Despite being down 4 at the half, I felt fine. You played you played a good quarter of that half of that quarter of the game, kind of with your backups in. And I was in Texarkana with a Houston alum who happened to live there. A really cool story. He lives in Houston, also has a ranch in Texarkana. Just happened to sit next to him at a bar in Texarkana while I was traveling for work. And at halftime, his family had shown up, so he moved from the bar and kind of sat at a table next to the bar. And we were kind of in talking distance from each other. And he kind of looked at him. He kind of looked at me, and he was like, I'm okay with this. And I said, me too. You played a lot of that half with your backups in, and you were down 4 at the half,
Yep.
I believe.
You're correct.
Yeah. So yeah, I felt fine. Because you were in that foul trouble. You could see pretty clearly that the Cougs scored 3 points in the final 2 minutes of that first half. Again, we talked about bench scoring and how you kind of want that to be a little bit better. You would have liked to have seen a little bit more there, but your defense was really good. You kind of mentioned it. It never really felt like this game was in doubt. Maybe there were a couple of times where you got a little worried, but even then, after that 3 that you mentioned, it was just kind of like, okay. Like, it never felt like there was a big concern for me. So you had another late non-scoring stretch, but it was equaled by your defensive performance. You also held them to 0 points in that same kind of stretch. And look, I can complain about the offense all I want to and how you can't have 4 minutes, 5 minutes without scoring a point. But if you also stop the other team from scoring in that same 4 or 5 minutes, why do I care? I don't care if you win a game 2-0. Like, if you just, like, I don't think that's good for your Ken Palm ranking, right? But if you told me we won every game by 2 points, okay. If we scored 2 and we held the other team to 1, I'd be all right.
The old Miami, Ohio strategy.
Yeah, like, cool. I don't care what it looks like in March. Just win. When you care about how it looks is before Big 12 play. That's when you want to make sure the wins look good so they don't ding you later on. Other than that, in Big 12 play, for the most part, unless you're playing like Utah or some of the lower teams in Kansas State, teams like that, I did just throw Kansas State out there just to throw Kansas State out there. I saw when I said it, you smirked like, hey, taking a little shot there. I was, you better believe it.
Kansas State catching strays. Didn't expect that. Yeah, I noted the offensive draw as well. We saw, I think, what's been a pretty regular, we'll say, scoring drought from the Cougs. It was about 10 minutes left to play in the second half till really the end of the game.
Yeah.
Really, once BYU did some intentional fouling there in the final minute or so to extend the game. But like you pointed out, that scoring drought was accompanied by U of H for the second time in as many games against BYU this season, really putting the clamps on them. The 66 points BYU scored in this one, Bobby, tied for the fewest the Cougs with a U have scored in a game this season, tied with the previous game that we played against them in Provo. And I mean, say what you will about BYU and whatever the flaws they've shown this season, that's a very skilled offensive team. Right now, 10th nationally in offensive efficiency as of recording. U of H shut them down at the points of the game where it mattered the most. And at times this season, and I've been guilty of this myself, we've been so spoiled by some of the truly absurd defensive teams Kelvin Sampson's had here in the recent past that we see this team, which is a lot younger than those previous teams, starting 2 first-year guys who are themselves not just starters who play a big role, but this is a damn good defensive team. Like this game was a reminder. This is a damn good defensive team. The job U of H did on AJ DeBonsa specifically is worth underlining. He had the highlight reel plays. Like I remember he had, I think, an and one where he like banked it off. And then he had like a step over dunk over Sharp or something like that. Cool. Sick highlight, man. How was the rest of your Big 12 tournament after this game? You know what I mean? Like he's going to get his. And
Devonta's a really good basketball player, man. Like,
yes, really good. Like I was not BSing when I said he could be the number 1 pick. Frankly, I might take him number 1 overall just for desire not to be the GM that missed on Kevin Durant 2.0. Well, like the Trailblazers did almost 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Like that's not a knock on his game, but for BYU to get the upset, they needed him to do better than 7 of 18 from the field, especially 4 of 13 from 2. And he didn't. I mean, this game, and certainly the one immediately after against Kansas, was a good reminder that this year's team on its own merits is an elite defensive team. And considering the youth, might be Sampson's best coaching job in terms of getting them to defend at a high level with 2 guys playing their first year of college basketball, something we've never seen on this team, like 2 guys this young playing this big of a role. I know we don't do overlooked plays of the game for basketball the way we do for football, but I wanted to specifically mention a play that you kind of touched on at the end of the first half, because Cougs have the ball for the final shot. You're down 41-34. BYU's really looking confident, holding their biggest lead of the game. You're hoping this game doesn't start to get away from you. Flemings takes the 3 as time is about to expire. Doesn't go in. Khalifa Saka gets a pretty hard putback. And then Sacco makes the and one to cut the lead to 41-37 going to the locker room. You saw U of H really come out punching the second half. Don't know if the Sacco putback and one really changes that. I could just say as I watched it, it felt like that kept BYU from going into the locker room on the same high as they would have up 7 points. Is it that important in the grand scheme of things? No, but to me, that was kind of my overlooked play. And I remember the time thinking, okay, it doesn't radically change how I feel, but 4-point deficit versus 7-point deficit after just not playing well at all for most of the final few minutes of the first half, like, feels pretty good. And this one wasn't JoJo Tugler's best game in terms of staying out of foul trouble, but for me, 28 minutes played is firmly in that acceptable range of how much you need Tugler out there, the minimum you need Tugler out there to still be a consistent difference-making presence. Sir, in a perfect world, you'd prefer something low 30s minutes-wise and a little bit less foul trouble than what we saw against BYU, but if we can get 28 minutes from Tugler in a purely hypothetical round of 32 game here later this week, I'm pretty confident that's a game the Cougs win. And Tugler's out there. If he's out there at least 28 minutes or so, he's out there long enough to make a positive impact. Most of what we talk about also when it comes to JoJo's is defense and his rebounding, but he had a really great play during that stretch where neither team was scoring very much. Cougs were up 59-58. He gets the ball, looks to be initially passing. He's just inside the 3-point arc and then gets decisive, takes it to the basket. Really nice finish. Put the Cougs up 61-58 at that moment. Not the kind of offensive skill and finish that we saw from JoJo Tugler in his first 2 seasons in the program. I think this was a really strong opening effort, and it's tricky to play an opponent who has already played multiple rounds, has a head of steam behind them after BYU, beat K-State, beat West Virginia coming into this one. We'll was very funny to see their head coach Kevin Young crying after the game about AJ DeBanza only getting to the free throw line 10 times as he did his usual foul baiting stuff. I mean, this was a win that sort of foreshadowed what was to come in the semifinal game against KU. Also, important note here, Bobby, last and only game the Cougs played on the Big 12's controversial LED screen court, which was retired after this day. I don't know if this prompted it, but certainly Tex Christian Anderson leaving their game on Thursday afternoon hurt did not help the survival of the LED on-screen court. My only thought, very dumb idea, but the little on-court effect where it looked like the glass was breaking anytime a player dunked.
Kind of cool.
Kind of sick, man.
Kind of cool. Kind of cool. No, here's the thing about the court, just kind of my high-level thoughts here. I'm not a basketball player, nor do I even pretend to be one. You could slip on any surface. I do think it looked a little bit slippy, especially when you saw guys like diving for the ball. But here's the thing, that court's been used in like NBA All-Star games. Like, it's not a new technology or anything like that. But I can appreciate the conference trying something else to get more buzz around the conference. That's the whole thing with being where the Big 12 is right now. That's how you killed the Pac-12, is you took risk, you took chances, and you went to the TV networks first and you cut the Pac-12 in line. Like, those are the kind of things that your mark does that you just kind of appreciate. And I can also appreciate him seeing it and going, okay, this isn't working. Now, if you want to go, why didn't the women who complained about the same thing get the same treatment? I'm also down to have that conversation. But also, I hate to break it to you, and like, it's unfair, and we can talk about equality and the inequity behind it, but the women's tournament was kind of the test run for the men's tournament. Like, I hate to say it, but also men put down different forces on the court sometimes than the women do that caused a little bit more slipping or something like that. Like, that's just kind of how it is. But overall, I didn't hate the idea of the court. I can appreciate that he was able to pivot from it. I can take some appreciation from that. I didn't think it was a bad idea. The thing that killed me is I thought we were going to do more with it. You're right. That graphic when they dunked of the glass breaking was sick, but like,
it was mostly static. You're right. Yeah.
It was mainly a gray court, and like, okay,
Just do a regular
but I
court
also
with that.
think you couldn't. I think you couldn't do bright colors because it's going to reflect up on the player's eyes, and you can't have that, and it's going to cause headaches and that kind of stuff. So, like, I understand why they had to go with the gray court. It looked like everything they could do with the court, you could do with an overhead projector that they do on, like, U of A at Fertitta Center.
Yeah,
like at Fertitta Center. And so, sure, the logo in the middle's not there, so it doesn't block it as badly, but like, I would have thought that you would have done something a little bit more with the court with like sponsorship. Like, it was the same sponsor the whole time. Like, at least on the baseline, you had Allstate there. Like, switch it up. Give me a different sponsor in each half. Make more money off of it. Like, it just seemed like there could have been more with the court that would have justified having it there where maybe you don't even transfer off of it.
Yeah, I'm not mad at them for trying it. Like, I disagree about how good the idea was on paper, but I'm not now skeptical of everything the Big 12 is going to do because of it. It's just like, you tried something.
It didn't work. It is what it is.
Exactly. Cougs return the semifinals against a Kansas Jayhawks team that, don't want to mince words, they kicked your butt in the one regular season head-to-head these two teams had at Fog Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence. And it's always an oversimplification whenever a team that lost previously in the season decisively wins a postseason rematch, and you say, oh, the team was extra motivated by that. I think they're just motivated to win a postseason basketball game at this point, regardless of what happened in February. But I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, Bobby, to say that the Houston Cougars last Friday night against Kansas looked like a team who was maybe a little bit pissed about that last game. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. And so for me, the first thing I can think of was what a damn defensive performance, right? Sam, who scored more this year in a game? Townsend versus Kansas, or Kansas versus Houston in the Big 12 championship?
I'm going to guess Kansas versus Houston.
That would be incorrect. Kansas versus Houston scored 47 points. Towson scored 49 against Kansas.
That's what you were asking me. You asked me who scored more points, or you asked me who scored fewer.
No, who scored fewer points? Kansas.
Yeah, I said
Did I not
Kansas.
say it that way?
I said Kansas against. Yeah,
Oh,
I said
my
Kansas
bad.
against Houston.
My bad. I think the way I said it wasn't right in my head. Totally on me. I take full responsibility for that one, Sam. Yeah, Kansas scored less against Houston than Townsend did against Kansas. Townsend put up
Pretty good.
49 against Kansas. They put up 47 against us. That 47-point performance, I'm going to try and get this right this time, Sam, in my head here. All right? That was the lowest amount of points Kansas has scored in a game since when?
It was I have this later. It was since they played us in the 2024 regular season finale, which I was at the Fertitta Center with co-host Emeritus Dustin.
That is correct. And can you tell me when it was before that?
I think it was. I remember seeing this in the car while we were like driving back to my car after the game. It was like the 80s. It might have been before I was born.
It was 2015. They scored 40 against Kentucky in the second game of the season.
That's right. That's right.
So the two of the three lowest point totals that they've had in a decade have come against Houston.
I got one more for you on this topic. I had this later, but I feel like I should say it now.
Yeah, hit me.
They shot 24.6% from the field on Friday night. That's the lowest percentage a team has ever shot in the Big 12 tournament. Fewest points they've scored in a Big 12 championship game since some point before Ken Pom started tracking. I went back to the 96-97 season, which is the earliest one that Ken Pom has. Yep. And he delineates, you could see where the Big 12 tournament games, you could do a quick scan. Nope. Quick scan. Nope. Quick scan. Nope. Year by year. And I double checked all of them. They have not had fewer in a game in the Big 12 tournament since before last Friday night.
It's insane. You held Darren Peterson to 14 points. He only had lower than that once all season. And he did only 14 points 2 other times this season. One of those was versus U of H. The other was, who do you think held Darren Peterson to 14 points in Big 12 play? Sorry I'm hitting you with all these questions, but these are some statistics
it's
that I think is...
I feel like if you're asking it, it's someone maybe a little unexpected. I'm gonna say UC. No, Cincy.
Utah. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, very unexpected.
And it wasn't even because he played like 14 minutes. He played 28 minutes in that game. Like he played. So
which for him, 28 minutes is like 40 minutes for like most players, you know.
But there was a legit like, will Kansas score 40 points in this game at some point? Like you got to a point where you were like, they're at 36 and they haven't really scored in 10 minutes. Like, are they going to be able to get 4 more here? Kansas scored their 25th point with 1:08 left in the first half. All right, another question for you. When did they score their 30th point?
Some point, we'll say like 8 minutes left. It was some point long.
10:48 left.
10:48
in the game.
Good Lord.
That's insanity, man. That is pure insanity. I know. I knew this game was going to be a problem for Kansas when Sinak came out and started banging in threes. You're like, yeah, and then they didn't even adjust to him. Like they didn't even like start putting a hand in his face. They just gave Chris Sinak. They're like, we dare you to make it, and Chris was like, all right, and then he did. He went 3 of 4 from 3. You add in 14 rebounds from Chris Sinak. And you got some problems if you're a Kansas Jayhawk. If you get that Sinak late in the NCAA tournament, let's say you make it to the you make it to that second weekend. If you're playing a tough game like Florida, or you're in the Final Four, and somehow you get 14 boards from Chris Sinak, in addition to going 3 of 4 from 3, there's not a team in the country that you can't beat. It's just plain and simple. If you get that kind of performance from Chris Sinak, in addition to everyone else doing what they do, but 14 boards from Sinak in a game like this is huge. And I think you can look at the defensive performance and you can really break everything down and go, if the Cougs play defense like that, they're in for, they can beat any team. And that's absolutely true. But I look at the offensive performance there, and I thought you did incredible there too. It's not like you won this game 52-47. Like, you put it on them in this game.
Yeah, like the regular season head-to-head between these teams, Cougs were the much stronger team out of the gates, to the point where Kansas never held a lead early, would ultimately never hold a lead of any kind in this basketball game. But I thought the big test for you was later in the first half, where in that regular season head-to-head, the Jayhawks went on a big run and you never really recovered. We saw KU respond to that big early U of H run. They cut the lead to 20-15 at one point before the 5-minute mark of the first half, cut it to 31-25 later, and you didn't go to halftime clinging on to a lead, though. You didn't go to halftime feeling like momentum was way against you, and then ultimately a 22-2 run from the very end of the first half through about 7 minutes in the second. One of the most emphatic knockout blows we've seen from this year's Cougar team. Not saying this year's team hasn't had their moments we've done that. They've had their fair share, but in part because of the youth of this team versus the previous ones, I don't know if we've seen as many run an opponent out of the gym type of runs like maybe you saw in previous years like this one. I mean, you made Kansas quit, plain and simple. Rest of this game really was garbage time. I believe 17 points was the closest margin KU got it to at any point after that knockout run. You were really able to rest the starters, probably more than you expected going into the game. And I'm glad you highlighted Chris Sinak. Not the only Cougar individual worth highlighting, not the only performance that got you here. We've seen a lot of the, maybe he should come back for one more year talk from Cougar fans, which to me is just transparently the selfish, I want this guy to forego an enormous payday in a year of playing professional basketball to keep playing for my team kind of stuff that you see from lots of fan bases. I don't think U of H is especially unique in that regard. And it's not just that he had the contributions he had. His contributions came at the stretch of this game where the Cougs needed him the most, the stretch where you were building the lead, where you were forcing the Jayhawks to play early from behind. And that shooting line, 5-13, doesn't look great on paper, but every time KU left him a little bit open, it felt like the Cougs found Sinak and he nailed a clutch three-pointer. He flashed that ability to score at all three levels, and I think what we've seen the most consistently from him this season, that he's better at rebounding than you'd expect somebody with the physical maturity of a 19-year-old to be. He rebounds like a guy who's in his third or fourth year of playing college basketball, and just reminded us what an unbelievable talent he is. That you were able to beat KU by 22, really run them off the floor and I know they don't attend this game on the same level as like Iowa State fans do, but a quasi home game. Like you're playing in Kansas City against a school that's like an hour and a half away. Like they're going to have a lot more fans than you, and didn't really get much offensively from either Uzan or Sharp. And this was never in doubt. That just tells you how insanely high the ceiling is for this team when you have Chris Sinak having these nights. He's not going to have it every night, but if I told you he has a couple more of these in him in the tournament, would you be surprised, Bobby?
No, not at all.
And I think that's one of those really exciting things that that you kind of keep in your mind as you look towards the postseason. And that emphatic Kansas win set up a rematch with the only team to beat the Cougs at the Fertitta Center this season, the Arizona Wildcats, who had themselves just won an insanely good back and forth semifinal game against Iowa State. I think thankfully for all of our pulses, you had one insanely entertaining buzzer beater semifinal game and one game that was just one team kicking the S out of the other. And I'm glad to have been a fan of the team that was kicking the S out of the other. As much as in neutral, I enjoyed the Arizona Iowa State game and the Jaden Bradley buzzer beater. The stakes coming into this one were, thanks to that, early Saturday semifinal loss by Florida by 17 to Vandy in the SEC championships. U of H, you had a little shot there to play your way back into being a one seed if you had been able to beat Arizona, but we know by now that didn't happen. And even with some stretches of not good basketball here, I'll still say, taken in whole, this was a better all-around effort against the Wildcats than the one we saw last month in Houston. But also, I think an unbiased assessment of this game would say the better team won, even if the Cougs gave a good account of themselves, not going away easily late. Bobby, what were your big thoughts from this one?
Yeah, man, to your point, I didn't have a ton of notes on this game because once it kind of felt like it got a little out of hand, you did have some good play there. Like you said, you had a chance to steal a 1 seed in this one. You played Arizona close. You actually made more buckets than they did. I think you scored 3 more field goals than they did. It was like 3 or 5. I can't remember. And you equaled them in turnovers. So you both had 8 turnovers there. Hell, you held Arizona scoreless for 7 minutes. But at the end of the day, you can kind of look at one thing that determined this. They shot 13 and made 13 more free throws than you did. That's kind of what this game boils down to. You got into some foul trouble early on. Sharp had to sit most of the first half. Maybe not most, but like I think he got a second foul with like
Decent chunk.
yeah, a good chunk of the first half. He sat out. It just doesn't help in a game against a team like Arizona. You got into some foul trouble, and I think, to be frank, I went back and rewatched this game knowing the result because I was driving home listening to it. I don't think there were many bad ticky-tack calls. I think they were calling the game close, and they kind of called the game close on both sides. You're just a more physical team than Arizona is, and that's kind of the nature of how the Cougars play basketball. And so I didn't think there was anything crazy going on. I didn't think that they weren't letting us play or something like that. They just got to the line more than you did, and they knocked them down. And sometimes that happens, especially as a U of H team. Arizona's really good at playing. They don't shoot many threes. They attack the rim a lot. That leads to getting fouls. And I just think it was kind of one of those things where they got to the line more than you did, and that was the difference in the game.
This game was also won or lost, I guess, depending on your rooting interest, in the final 3 minutes of the first half, first 3 minutes of the second half. Mm-hmm. That was the point in the game where you were trailing, but not by a bunch. You needed to hang around, and instead, to kind of use the fight sports metaphor, Arizona landed a few big punches, knocked you to the mat, and by the time you were back on your feet and fighting, you were in a big hole that was hard to get out of. But it's a massive credit to this team that they still held a team as skilled as Arizona, who, unlike the last head-to-head, had their star freshman front court guy, Koa Pete, out there. You held them to absolutely nothing for 7 minutes, cut the lead to 62-60, gave yourself a chance to get back into this game, but the Wildcats, right at the point that the Cougs might have been, had a chance to take the lead and maybe truly put them under pressure, you saw Arizona counterpunch, and you can never really put that same kind of pressure on them again in the closing minutes of this game. You never let them truly relax, but watching live after the point where it was 62-60 and I was kind of starting to get hopeful again, I didn't really find myself believing we could win this at any point after that. Wanted to shout out JoJo Tugler. I don't know if he's had a better individual game this season. Starts with the fact that he was able to play 35 minutes, and boy, was he a menace when he was on the court. 20 points, 9 of 15 from the field, season high, 7 offensive boards, and 3 assists for good measure. I think something that maybe is an overlooked area of his game where he's taken a big jump from previous seasons to his junior season. To play that many minutes against an Arizona team that, you just said it, Bobby, they're really, really good at drawing fouls. They're really, really good at playing downhill, such that Tugler was pretty much a non-factor with foul trouble in that February game. Hate that it came in a losing effort, but one of the better individual performances we've seen the entire season. In that pantheon with Kingston's 40-something against Texas Tech of really great performances and, unfortunately, a losing effort. Flip side, kind of like the previous head-to-head with Arizona, you weren't able to get Sanak involved in the same way as the win against Kansas or even the win against BYU. And in a game that was decided by a pretty small margin, that feels huge. Was really nice to see Chase McCarty, 1 game removed from hitting his wrist on the floor against Kansas, have a good offensive game, not look any worse for wear there. I know that was something we were kind of heart and mouth when we saw him go down up by a bunch in the Jayhawks game. Mercy Miller also had a Big 12 opponent career high, 13 points with his father and DJ Khaled sitting courtside. That's cool. That you got good offensive performances from your 2 bench guards and Tugler partly makes the loss sting a bit more, but also, like, if these guys are capable of doing that against teams that are almost entirely going to be worse than Arizona, like, that also feels pretty good. Like, you lost this game, and I think you deserve to lose this game ultimately in terms of who played better and who didn't, but I think you acquitted yourself a lot better than you did in Houston last month. And the good news is you are not going to see a team of Arizona's caliber until maybe you see Duke
Arizona.
in the Final Four if you get there, or Arizona in the title game if you get there. You know what I mean? Like Arizona, in my opinion, I know Duke's the 1 seed and I'm whatever, they got the resume for it, but I think Arizona can make an argument for just how tested they are and that they only have 2 blemishes on their record the entire season, man. I think that could be the best team in college basketball. That could be the team that's absolutely cutting down the net. And that's not me doing like Tom Penders blowing smoke about how good 2009 Marshall is to justify why he lost to them on the road by 11. Like they're legit a good team. You didn't think Coach TP would come up here, Bob. You didn't think
Here's the thing though. As a unabashed Tom Penders fan, I don't appreciate that slight shot at Tom Penders here.
Look, I was very critical of Coach P back in the day. I now realize that, frankly, we were punching way above our weight for how little we were putting in the program when we had him. So it's a cheeky shot. Like I don't mean any actual serious criticism of our basketball coach from 2004 to 2010.
He's a good man.
He just again, I don't get too sidetracked. We'd be like an Irma Southwest Grill coming off like a 9-point loss at Marshall where we allowed 90 points for some reason. He'd be like, yeah, they're really good. And I'm like, they haven't made the tournament since the first Bush administration, dude. Come on. Anyway, back on track. Bobby, do we have any more Arizona thoughts, Big 12 tournament thoughts before we get to the look ahead?
No, man, nothing too crazy. I'm ready to, now that the past is in the rearview mirror, let's look ahead, bud.
Let's look ahead to March Madness, an event we all love very much. Cougs will begin their NCAA postseason at 9:10 p.m. Central on Thursday night on True TV against the 15 seed and Big Sky champion Idaho Vandals. When we did our bracket react pod on Sunday, we gave our earliest thoughts on this opening round opponent. Bobby, you've had a couple more days to think on it. What are your thoughts on the Vandals?
Yeah, man, I just kind of looking at KenPom, I would say for Cougar fans, if you were kind of wondering who we may have played in the season that could give you an idea of what you're going to get with the Idaho Vandals, the team most like them, I'd kind of lean into Middle Tennessee for that comp there. It's obviously not a perfect, but it's pretty close. Idaho plays a bit faster than Middle Tennessee State did, but defensively, offensively, their ratings in KenPom are pretty close to one another.
They both take a lot of threes. I don't know if that's in your notes or not. They both take a lot of threes. Sorry.
No, you're good. Offensively, you're going to see a heavy dose of BK Johnson. While he isn't the Vandals' leading scorer, they seem to run a lot of their offense through him. Just kind of watching highlights of them this year and some of their just information that you see. He's not their leading scorer, but he touches the ball a lot for them. He has that kind of Emmanuel Sharp vibe in that kind of way where he is a catalyst for the offense. He might not be the leading scorer, but you're going to see a lot. You're going to see the ball in his hands quite a bit, getting the offense not necessarily going, but being that kind of second option who can get to the basket and shoot the three as well. The Vandals defensively, they make teams shoot from distance in the mid range. They kind of funnel everybody to the mid range. You look at their kind of scouting report, I guess you could say. And when you pull up the average 2-point distance, so that's a new thing KenPom introduced this year. When you score in the lane, or when you score inside the 3-point line, so when you shoot a 2, how far from the basket are you? And the closer you are, the better. The further away, the worse that kind of rating is. Idaho does a really good job of forcing teams to shoot from distance in the in 2-point, kind of that mid-range. The problem for Idaho is that the Cougs are 364th in the country at their distance on 2 points made. The Cougs live in the mid-range. Chris Sinek is going to knock down a bunch of shots in the mid-range. Kingston Flemings loves the mid-range. So that's going to be a problem for Idaho, the fact that they like to funnel teams to shoot from the mid-range. The Cougs love to shoot from the mid-range. So one of the things as I was kind of previewing all these games, and you'll see it in the next couple of previews that I kind of talk about, I was curious, how can a team beat U of H if they are going to pull off the win against U of H? And at this point, it is an upset. If they are going to pull off the upset of the Cougs, what does that look like? And for Idaho, they do a great job of protecting the ball. They don't turn the ball over very much. They are 5th in the nation in offensive rebound percentage allowed. If the Cougs can't hit the mid-range shot, if for some reason you're a little cold, if Idaho can keep you off the glass, that's a problem, right? That can really be a problem if you're not knocking down the mid-range shots. You're not getting those second opportunities. If Idaho crashes the glass and can hit their threes, which you pointed out, a high percentage of their points that they score this year, they are 37th in the country with over a third of their points coming from 3-point range. If they can make those threes and they can crash the glass and keep the Cougs off the offensive glass, it's March, man. I don't think it'll happen, but it could.
If you've listened to us for a bit, you know my spiel by now. You have to be a certain level of opponent to defeat or at least seriously compete with Cougar men's basketball. The last time the Cougs lost to a team even somewhat close to the same advanced stat profile as Idaho was a 1-point loss to Temple early in conference play now over 3 years ago. It's not being overly dismissive of this opponent when I say that U of H just doesn't lose these kind of games. It's backed up by facts. It's backed up by every subsequent game since that Temple game, which itself was an extremely close loss where he missed a bunch of free throws and lost by 1. It doesn't happen. I do remember, and this is actually later in the same season that we lost to Temple, and I was trying to remember this game during the live react, and I couldn't remember it specifically. Northern Kentucky gave us a bit of a scare in the 116 game to open the 2023 tournament. Cougs ultimately won by 11, but it was like a 3-point game.
Yeah.
At the half was really, really stressful. I remember that whole tournament was really stressful. You had the stressful Northern Kentucky win. You had to come from behind with plenty of help from our departed buddy Tremont Mark to beat Auburn and Birmingham, and then lost to Miami in the Sweet 16 in Houston. Or not in Houston. That was the year it would have been the Final Four in Houston. Excuse me. Not in Houston. I believe that was in Kansas City, but I could be wrong on that one. But knock on wood, in that situation also, Marcus Sasser was never healthy in that tournament. I think Jamal Shed and or Mark was dealing with some injury stuff as well. So not really a comparable situation to what you're going into against Idaho, but still worth looking at this opponent and seeing how they could win this game. They take a lot of threes. Out of the opponents that U of H has seen to date, only Texas Tech and Florida State take a higher percentage of their shots from long range. And that's not a bad strategy to try and make an unlikely upset happen. By the numbers, the Cougs are much better defending inside versus on the perimeter. The Cougs are allowing opponents to shoot at a higher 3-point percentage than any Kelvin Sampson NCAA tournament caliber team here. I think the last team to be worse in the NCAA in opponent 3-point field goal percentage was actually his last NIT team in 2016-2017, which is to say U of H still isn't a bad perimeter defensive team, but relative to your interior defense, maybe not as strong on the perimeter. We've also played some good 3-point shooting teams as well, but also important to note with that 3-point shooting, the Vandals aren't wildly efficient at making those. The only guy shooting the only players, shooting over 37% are Isaiah Brickner, the Big Sky Sixth Man of the Year, and Brody Roberry, who is an extremely occasional outside shooter. Like, takes enough of them that it's not like, oh, he hucked up a couple in a shot clock expiration situation. He's actually taken design threes. He made a big open 3 in their Big Sky championship win that I watched against Montana, but not a high volume shooter there. Colton Mitchell and guy you mentioned, Biko Johnson, will both volume shoot from deep, but neither is really close to what you'd call efficient at it. Where I actually think Idaho will have the biggest challenge making a game of this is defensively. Idaho does a great job, like you mentioned, of keeping opponents from grabbing offensive boards. One of the best in the nation. Do a pretty good job of defending in the interior, but even only playing one Ken Palm top 100 team their entire regular season and postseason schedule, they're still 239th in opponent 3-point field goal percentage. It hasn't always been consistent, but this Cougar team have enough guys who have flashed the ability to shoot from deep that I think it could be a big problem for the Vandals if, say, Emmanuel Sharp or Milos Uzan hits their first 2 of 3 attempts. I think that's going to be kind of a harbinger of the night they're going to be in for.
What was the game where Sharp went absolutely off? I'm blanking all of a sudden where he had like 21. Colorado? Was it the Colorado game? No,
he's had a lot of games where he has 20 plus. What are you talking about?
But it was like a recent one where he Never mind. Keep
You
going.
gotta give me more than
I'll
that,
I'll
dog.
remember it. I'll remember it. He started off like 6 of 7. It just I didn't have it pulled up because you would when you said it, it struck it in me. But yeah, if he comes out and he starts hot early, you can expect to see some problems for Idaho like that. You are absolutely correct.
It's March. We've seen plenty of crazy upsets in our lives, but those happenings are pretty rare. And at the risk of overconfidence, I don't believe it's going to happen here Thursday night.
I agree. I agree. I don't see it happening um for Idaho. I really hope it doesn't happen for Idaho. We had a good time. We appreciate you coming out, but hopefully we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, I say with a trace of condescension, the kind of March story I love. A team that hasn't been to the tournament since 1990, going back, has been historically a very hard place to win basketball games. Getting to play in the biggest competition in college basketball, like that's really
Mhm.
cool.
And I think the game I was thinking of was Emmanuel Sharp versus Utah, where he came out and started
Oh
like five
yeah,
or
yeah.
six, and he just
Okay,
absolutely came
I
out.
I take back my my be like, what are you talking? I take back. I remember that now. Your
He
general
came out
description lines
just
up.
on fire. So
He did.
I couldn't remember
We
which
didn't do
game it
much else
was.
well that game relative for
No,
how not good Utah is. It was just kind of one of those
yeah,
unsexy wins or unsexy for everything but Emmanuel Sharp just hitting everything he put up from deep early.
yeah. I think he had 6 in the first half. Like it was just
It was
crazy.
crazy.
It was absolutely insane. I was like when you said if he comes out and he plays like he did in the Utah game where he makes like the first 2 quick, it could be a long night.
Yeah, he's a momentum shooter too.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
good guy. If he gets going, he's on your team. The nemesis if he's facing you.
Yeah, he had 7 halfway through the first half.
Good night. I wanted to take also a quick look ahead at who the Cougs could have immediately after on Saturday, assuming Thursday goes as planned. The Cougs would face the winner of the 7-10 round of 64 matchup between St. Mary's and Texas A&M. Possible second time in 3 seasons that we would see the Aggies in the round of 32, or an opponent in St. Mary's, if we see them, who will be desperate to make their first Sweet 16 appearance since the 2010 NCAA tournament. Both interesting potential matchups. You've had some time to think about it now, Bobby. What are your thoughts on these teams? And I want you to start with this question. You have omniscient power here. You could pick who the Cougs are playing on Saturday.
The
Which one
Aggies.
are you picking and why? The Aggies?
The Aggies.
Okay.
I would to be
Is
honest.
it purely because they want to? Is it for basketball reasons, or purely just because I want to eliminate them from the postseason for the second time in 3 years?
Oh no, absolutely for basketball reasons. I with fear of being a quote that Bucky finds somehow by listening to this. I have zero faith in that Texas A&M team. It's a very hot and cold team. I'm not saying that they're a bad team necessarily, but St. Mary's scares me quite a bit. I think St. Mary's was underseeded by probably a seed. I could see an argument that they're probably a 6 seed, not a 7 seed. You could even squeak them into the if you overrate them a little bit, squeak them onto the 5 line even. They're 24th in KenPom, so that's like really good. That's one of the so I yeah, I am a little worried about St. Mary's. You know, like I said, this feels like a 6 seed to me. St. Mary's feels more like a 6 seed than they do a 7 seed. 5 losses on the year. In the instant react, we really talked about how you have to learn how to win. And teams that's why teams in the tournament mid majors, why Cinderella exists is because a lot of times you see these teams that go 30-3 and they're a 12 seed, or in the case of St. Mary's, they lose 5 games in the entire year. They just know how to win. They got they have only 1 loss to a non-tournament team. Big wins over Santa Clara and Gonzaga at home. Okay, right? Granted, you beat them at home, you lost to them on the road, but those are still good wins. Those are 2 tournament teams, and not tournament teams that snuck in. Both those teams would have been in no matter what happened in the West Coast conference. So they're top 20 defensively, top 50 in offense. Again, kind of going back to the closest team to them in my opinion, is actually Kansas when you kind of break them down on KenPom. Kansas is better defensively, but they actually rate lower in offense than St. Mary's. And so I think that Kansas comparison is is kind of close. And you looked good against Kansas on that neutral court, but you also probably took your hardest loss to the point that you said against Kansas. They really kicked your teeth in that game in Lawrence. And yes, you could say Fog Allen and that effect, and yes, that certainly plays. But you didn't look great in that Kansas game. And again, I think the schedule really kind of bore that out a little bit for the Cougs, made that a little bit tougher. But they just don't seem to have many red flags, even as a mid-major. Again, they're going through the lineup. He may not be their leading scorer, but something that caught my attention and will almost always catch my attention is a big man who plays really, really well. And that for St. Mary's, they have a 7'3" guy named Andrew McKeever. No relation to Fluff, by the way.
Spelled differently, also.
He's averaging just under a double-double a game. Size always worries me down in the post. And the reason why it worries me is it's worried me the whole time under Sampson. You see big guys like this can have games against the Cougs. And the reason being is the Cougar defense loves to, double the post. And they kind of create havoc doing that. First off, they run the blitz screen at the top. If you screen, they blitz the ball handler. But then they kind of recover back, and you get in passing lanes. With a 7'3" guy, he throws his hand up and he says, "Hit me here." And maybe you don't have that problem. But then when you blitz him in the post and you double team him in the post, you run into another problem there. The thing with causing the havoc in the post is you double team and they can't see over you and they can't pass it over your guys, right? They can't get it over JoJo Tugler with his huge length. If you're 7'3", you can see the passing lanes better. You can see over JoJo Tugler's hands, right? JoJo Tugler's undersized, but he's got that 7'6" wingspan. I don't know if anyone's ever mentioned that on a TV, during the TV broadcast, but JoJo Tugler has a 7'6" wingspan. But when you're 7'3", you can see over that, you can throw over that. So how does he handle that blitz from the Houston Cougars, right? In the post. So that was my concern, kind of looking at their lineup. They do have some really good scores, but anytime I see a 7'3" guy, it always worries me about how U of H is going to handle them. So how do they pull off the win versus the Cougs? Well, they forced the Cougs into some bad shots with really good defense. They're actually one of the best teams in the country defending from three. So what happens is the Cougs get cold. Suddenly you're down 10 and you're thinking, what in the world just happened here? That's how I think St. Mary's pulls it off. But overall, I definitely, to answer your question, would rather play the Aggies here. Sam, do you want to talk St. Mary's or you want me to go on the Aggies and then you hit both of them up?
Go for the Aggies.
All right, I'll break down the Aggies here. When you see the Aggies, you hear tempo, tempo, tempo. That's the only thing you really need to think about when you think of Texas A&M. They have a first-year head coach. Took them to the tournament in his first year. Good for them. They play what is called buckyball, is something that you will hear quite a bit while you watch that St. Mary's Houston game. They play a fast pace there.
St. Mary's A&M game.
St. Mary's, what did I say?
Houston.
Oh, St. Mary's A&M game. My bad. They play that fast pace, 14th in the country in average offensive possession time. They will stop you from shooting the three, but if you can break the press and settle into the offense, it gets much easier in the paint. They don't do a good job of defending the paint very well, which if you're playing high pressure defense and you're playing a full court press the whole time, it makes sense that you're going to give up twos because they're going to break the press and run out on you. The Cougs have struggled with full court pressure at times. You actually saw, what game was it? Somebody was pressing and you saw them have Milos bring the ball up instead of Kingston to just kind of deal with that pressure. Will be interesting to see if Sampson wants to, if he needs to put that in the game plan versus A&M here. So the Aggies will get their fair share. They're going to score. They are going to go out and run. That's been a worry in previous years for Samson teams is they've been known to kind of speed up, but this year you've played some fast teams and you just haven't been dragged into that tempo battle, which is something that is a big change from, like I said, Samson teams of the past. So, I think it's going to be really interesting. You have a G who will get a lot of the attention in this game from Texas A&M. He averages 15 a game. So the question again, how do the Aggies pull it off? They speed the Cougs up. Like I said, the Cougs haven't really fallen into this trap this year. But if the Cougs kind of start getting a little quick, they start running, throwing up a bunch of bad shots. The Aggies get out running. This game gets out of hand. That's how I think A&M can pull it off. But I would much rather see A&M than St. Mary's here.
You know, it's funny to get back to that question I asked. If you simulated the Cougs playing either of these teams 100 times, I think the Cougs win the vast majority of those against both of these teams, but I believe St. Mary's would win more than A&M. Still, I'd rather see St. Mary's. A&M matches up worse in some ways, and on the balance is going into the tournament playing worse ball, but that frenetic pace, the buckyball, the periodic ability to really get hot from three in a single elimination tournament, that's the recipe for the Scaries. That's the recipe for a team pulling an upset they have no business pulling on the Cougars. Like that's and I think, you know, the buckyball, like I think they genuinely have had like a good season, considering the coach came in and basically had to almost rebuild this team from scratch. Like most of this roster is playing their first year at Texas A&M. When their coach previously, Buzz Williams, left, took a lot of the key guys with him to Maryland. Weirdly enough, a Maryland team that was just not good at all this year. A couple other guys, I think, transferred to other schools. So largely new roster here. And it goes against the fiber of my being to say nice stuff about a Texas A&M team and a Texas A&M coach. But I think if you had reasonable expectations for his first year, I think the fact that he got into the NCAA tournament and didn't have the strongest finish this season, but we're never truly among that group of bubble teams when it was all said and done. I think it could be counted on its own as a pretty good season. And the Aggies had a lot of losses down the stretch. And I can't defend the fact that they got absolutely smoked by Oklahoma in their one SEC championship game. But again, I'll go against my nature and be fair to the Aggies here. You look at the schedule, a lot of their losses down the stretch were understandable. 3-point road loss at Bama, road losses to Florida, Vandy, and Arkansas. Those aren't the kind of losses that put a serious dent in your resume unless you're losing other games on top of that. And A&M generally did good against the opponents they were expected to beat and got some good resume wins along the way to going 11-7 in SEC play this season. Did have to survive some close wins against not very good opponents, but again, an 11-7 record in one of the best conferences in college basketball speaks for itself there. They also, they have one of my favorite big men, Rashawn Agee, super veteran guy, could score at all three levels. You said it, average 15 points a game, can rebound and pass, and really do a lot of the things that you expected Kelvin Sampson, U of H big man, to do, which I would say is about the highest praise I can give an opposing player. Zach Clements and Rylan Griffin, also two former Kansas guys, have returned home to the Lone Star State after struggling with the Jayhawks. They've both been pretty good. Sophomore Ruben Dominguez, who's represented Spain at the U16 and U19 levels, high-end three-point shooter, guy the Cougs definitely have to account for. Cougar team, we've said it before on here a lot, has had their struggles at times relative to recent Cougar history defending the three. The frenetic tempo, as a one-off matchup, I think they're a worse team than St. Mary's. Gun to my head, I think St. Mary's is the team we're going to see. If you're asking who I'd rather see, though, it's St. Mary's. And they, weirdly enough, have some of the same characteristics, if you kind of squint at it, as last year's U of H team. Elite or very good defensive team, maybe not as good as the Cougars. They were a very good defensive team, elite three-point shooting team like the Cougars were last year, elite offensive rebounding team, not terribly efficient at scoring inside the arc, but very, very good at keeping opponents from making shots. Good enough to decisively beat Gonzaga and Santa Clara on their home court. Like you said, here's my criticism, Bobby. Away from Moraga, California, this team didn't do great against quality opponents. Lost on the road to those same Gonzaga and St. Mary's teams. Lost to a not very good Boise State team in Idaho Falls. A Boise State team that lost to a not very good UNLV team on their home court. Lost to Vandy by 25 in the Bahamas. Not really going to ding them for that one, but not saying that St. Mary's doesn't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament field. They absolutely do, but the question to me of whether or not St. Mary's has the athleticism to beat NCAA tournament level opponents, it's not just a 2026 question. That's the big knock on them. And unlike Gonzaga, they don't ever answer that by winning games in the postseason. They haven't been to the Sweet 16 since 2010, despite being a pretty regularly in the tournament team. Most often, they've gone out in the first round. And I don't want to skew too negative. I agree with you. I think they're kind of underseeded. This is the KenPom number 24 team in the country. They're still a good team. They have a ton of size and ability to shoot the three, which isn't a common combination. 2 7-footers with some offensive skill. They definitely clear the bar of the level of opponent who can give the Cougs problems. But I don't like their athleticism against the Cougs. I think they can make it uncomfortable, but I think if that's a team we see in the round of 32, I'm expecting a 7 to 9 point Cougar win.
I think that's fair.
Do we have any other larger South region bracket NCAA tournament thoughts that you want to share here before we move on from the topic of hoops?
No, man, I don't.
So a couple quick NCAA championship items. I'll get through them quickly because we've already done an hour on Cougar basketball with many, many sports left to go. And we're trying to keep this thing under 2 hours for you, the listeners. And we try to lead with any NCAA championship talk here. And considering Cougar Track and Field had a few athletes in action at the NCAA Indoor Championships in Fayetteville, briefly go there next. Cougs had 3 athletes representing the program, Jamar Marshall Jr. and Casey McCoy in the men's and women's 60-meter hurdles, respectively. And on the field side, you had Andrea Mita in the men's high jump. Marshall and McCoy competed on Friday night in their event semifinals. Your sprinting and running events usually have a semifinal. Field events just generally do one final. Neither McCoy or Marshall ultimately made the top 8 cut. Marshall had the 11th fastest time among all competitors. McCoy had the 14th fastest, but both earned second-team All-American honors. For those performances, this was McCoy's first appearance in an NCAA championship event of any type here this season, which I think is a cool feat regardless of anything else we talk about. And on Saturday, we had Andrea Mita finish 7th in the men's high jump finals. That was a career best for Andrea at an NCAA championship event of any type. His previous best was 8th at last year's NCAA Indoors. It had best clearance on Saturday of 2.15 meters. That performance put the Cougs among the point scoring teams at the event. Got you 1.5 team points for the men and individually earned Mita his 3rd All-American honor of his career and his first time as a first-team All-American as a collegiate. So big congrats to those 3 athletes. Obviously, we're excited about the start of outdoor season where we expect to see, when it's all said and done, a few more athletes representing the Cougs at the end of the season. The season I think that most track athletes are more excited about, but big shout out to Jamar, Casey, and Andrea for what they did at Fayetteville at NCAA Indoors. And we'll just mention, while we're on the topic of Cougar Track and Field, the Cougs will be in action at the NCAA at the NCAA Outdoors. Not for another few months on that one. Don't know where my brain went there. We'll be in action at the one-day Kirk Baptiste Invitational that will be happening this Thursday on campus.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Anytime Cougars participate in an NCAA championship, it's always exciting. Really happy to see Andrea Mita get that first team All-American honors, finish with a career best finish, like you said. So just super exciting to see that overall.
No doubt. Not a championship that has been competed in yet, but we'll briefly set the table for this week's NCAA Swimming and Diving Championships in Atlanta, which Cougar Swim and Dive will be sending 4 athletes to. We talked a little bit in last week's regular pod about NCAA diving zones. We knew Michelle McLeod and Maisie Willison had both, at that point when we recorded about a week ago, punched their ticket to the NCAAs. McLeod at the time in the 1 meter and 3 meter, joined by Willison, the freshman, in the 3 meter. Since we last recorded, McLeod and Caroline Rowland competed on the final day of diving zones in the platform diving event. McLeod qualifying for her 3rd event, 5th place finish, going 3 for 3 on the possible diving events that you can go to at NCAAs, which, in my expert opinion here, really fucking cool, Bobby.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
To qualify for 100% of the events that you could possibly qualify for. Like,
that seems good. Not a swim and dive expert, but or not a diving expert, but do know that 100% qualification is good.
Pretty good. She placed 5th there. Roland ended her season with a 14th place finish among the 32 competitors. Quick aside, looked at the PDF results for this event, as I often do when putting together my notes for this kind of summary. They have U of H listed as HU as the
I hate it
abbreviation of the
so
event.
much.
A truly unhinged way to abbreviate our alma mater's name. But exciting stuff. Even not knowing how Michelle will do yet at NCAAs, I would say her performance at Big 12s, where she had multiple different event wins, and now, as we've both established, qualifying 3 for 3 on the NCAA diving events, I would say puts her in the conversation for top Cougar female athlete of the current sports season. A really incredible performance, and not one that's finished, because she's going to be beat at NCAAs along with her fellow diver Maisie Wollaston, along with Flo Peter and Alexia Duncan on the swimming side as well. Really exciting stuff. Really exciting that 3 of those 4 athletes just name checked. Everyone but Flo Peter is actually projected to be back for the coming season, or in a couple of their cases, seasons plural. But that will be starting Thursday in Atlanta, and we will certainly be keeping an eye on how the Cougs are doing at NCAAs in Atlanta.
Yeah, like I just said for track, anytime you compete in the national championships, it's an exciting time and something Cougar fans should be excited about.
And we will kick off our spring sports talk tonight with a triumphant return to Cougar Tennis Corner. The Cougs faced 2 ranked teams at home this past weekend. You had at the time number 30 Texas Tech on Friday and number 51 Colorado on Sunday. Going into the weekend, I was encouraged because 1-1 seemed very likely to me, and unlike the previous 2 seasons, I thought U of H could actually compete with Tech. And I guess Colorado too, considering last season you lost 4-0 to them in Boulder. I thought you'd get at least 1 win from these, and I thought both would be competitive. The results didn't prove me wrong, even though a 2-0 week would have been the ideal. Felt kind of like a stretch goal. If you had pressed me on specific score predictions, don't do those, won't do those, but I probably have gone with Tech winning 4-2 and then us beating Colorado 4-1 or 4-2, which the Cougs outperformed on both counts. You did lose to Tech, was a heartbreaker 4-3, but you swept Colorado on Sunday. We'll start with the heartbreaker against Tech. That was the Cougs' first home loss of the season, as I said a moment ago, ultimately falling 4-3 to the Lady Raiders. Pretty similar match script to how the previous Sunday at Arizona went. Cougs had to play from behind in this one after losing the opening doubles point. Cougs lost 6-3 on court 2, which has been kind of the consistent struggle point in doubles after holding an early lead against Tech's highly ranked court 1 doubles pairing of Dmitrichenko and Murphy. Gems and Sophie lost that one 6-4, which gave the Lady Raiders the doubles point. Petchy and Lisa were tied 5-5 in the unfinished match. Not surprisingly, in the singles portion of the match, the 2 Tech stand-up players, Dmitrichenko and Murphy, were the biggest challenges. They won fairly quickly on singles courts 1 and 2 in straight sets, gave Tech at that point a 3-0 lead, but I think where this team differentiates itself from the ones of the recent past, Cougs fought back from here. Cougs on the whole were much better in singles. Eva Seppa had one of her best matches this season, beat Tech senior Hialoa 6-1, 6-4 on court 3, which got the Cougs on the board. And then Valeria Krohotina and Sophie Schouten also won in straight sets in their matches on courts 4 and 6 to tie the match at 3. Court 5, Petya Drame, after losing pretty decisively in the first set, played much better in the second, forced a tiebreaker at 6-6 to potentially keep the Cougs alive, lost a super tight one, 8-6 to lose the second set, and then give the Lady Raiders their 4th point to clinch the match. No moral victories here. Ultimately, when you're trying to have a breakout season like the Cougs are this spring, but it was refreshing to see this team actually compete and put pressure on an opponent who's been among the best in the sport in the Big 12 since you joined the conference. And in a lot of ways, Bobby, it reminded me of the soccer game, which it's weird. Soccer and tennis, very different, but it reminded me of the soccer game in Lubbock, because I remember the previous 2 seasons, soccer was just emphatically not competitive with a Tech team that's among the best in the conference. You didn't go to Lubbock in this one, so there are some parallels that don't exactly line up here, but
doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, but I watched them like we're actually competing with Tech in the sport. We have not come close to doing it any other year, and painful that you competed them to the point where you're like, man, if this had gone a little different, you could have won. But I think a performance to be proud of. Again, no moral victories, but it's probably coloring how I feel a bit that I know 2 days later this team bounced back with a pretty emphatic win. I still wasn't that concerned going into the match with Colorado. I mean, the 3 opponents you've lost to date, Arizona State, University of Arizona, and Texas Tech, are all teams didn't expect to win against before the season. And in 2 of those matches, you were about as close as you could possibly be, even admittedly in losses. Colorado was weird. They were kind of a hot and cold team, good enough to have beaten perennial conference power Oklahoma State at home. And as much as the final ultimate result from Colorado was emphatic, it was kind of a sliding doors moment in this game. You did not start this one in the doubles court like it was going to be a dominant win. At one point, you were down 5-2 on court 2. You were tied in the other 2 courts. And it just kind of felt like that was my one concern when I was following. Like, is this going to be another match now where we're down 0-1? And your singles are good, but you're putting a lot of pressure on them to have to win 4 of 6 minimum to keep this match alive. Like, you're putting a lot of pressure. And from that point, really, really, really impressive performance from, I think, a pair that's struggled relative to your other doubles pairings, Eva and Valeria. They battled back from being down 5-2, like I mentioned a bit ago, to get their first career Big 12 doubles win. They won the final 5 games they're set, won 7-5 to clinch the doubles point for the Cougs right after Shems and Sophie won by their own 7-5 score moments before that on court 1. And this match was also a reminder of how unbelievably tough the Cougs are once they get to the singles portion of the match, and with a 1-0 lead. Valeria was the first one off the court. She had a dominant straight sets win on court 4, where she only lost 4 games total. Not surprisingly, Sophie was close behind with her own court 6 straight sets win. And Lisa had probably her most impressive win this spring. She largely dominated CU's top singles player, a multi-time All Pac-12 honoree, a former ITA All-American selection, ISL Aid, 6-2, 6-3, got the Cougs their 4th point and clinched a second sweep win in Big 12 play and stopped that 3-game losing streak that you'd accumulated to that point. Bobby, U of H won their opening sets in all of the unfinished singles matches as well. I think it maybe is a bit uncharitable to presume that U of H wins all 7 points if this gets played to the complete end, but that would have been entirely possible Sunday. And it tells you how well the Cougs finished off the match, and it also tells you just how much better this team is than ones of the recent past. And with a team like this one that hasn't experienced winning, at least winning while competing for the University of Houston, anytime you have a losing streak, it starts to make everything feel a bit more fragile. Not that any of the losses that you got to this point were bad, but the win over Colorado was a nice reminder that this is a mentally tough group. And more specifically, this is a very, very hard team to beat, even by quality opponents, if they could just get to that singles portion of the match with a 1-0 lead. I mean, you now have, after this weekend's matches, 2 different players with double-digit wins. Sophie Schouten and her eye-popping 12-0 record, and Valeria Krohotina also sitting at 10-1. If you want context for that, Valeria led you for the entirety of last season with 8 spring singles wins. Like that's just how much better you are this season. Cougs are 50-13 overall in singles with a 12-6 record in Big 12 play. To give that number some context, you were 13-37 in Big 12 singles the entirety of last season, and 2 seasons ago won 2 singles matches total in Big 12 play. Might have been why there was a coaching change after there.
Yeah, and it seems like that coaching change might have been working out, bud.
I think it's worked out so far. And this has been a pretty front-loaded schedule. Like, there are definitely good teams left to play. There's at least one this weekend, but all 6 of the conference opponents you have faced so far are either teams that are, I would say, borderline locked in to being in the NCAA tournament, or teams that at worst are going to be just on the wrong side of the bubble. That's the quality of competition that you've played so far. Like, there are actually a few Big 12 matches where the Cougs would be the college tennis equivalent of a big favorite. You haven't gotten to them on the schedule yet, honestly. Like, there's 3 out there, and there's some tough ones in between, but I think the team is definitely taking care of business. I don't think you've dropped any match that you would have expected to win in the preseason. Certainly the fact that you had a 1-point loss to both Arizona and Tech, you kind of feel like, man, you wish you could have found a way to win one of those. But I think this team is still very much on track to be where they need to be.
Yeah, it's just following through you have a good way of reminding me when Cougar tennis is playing and keeping me updated. It's so exciting to just see what this team has already exceeded a lot of expectations. I mean, you look at that hype video, how much fun was that? And it was like out of the doormat era. Buddy, looks like you're out of the doormat era, man.
Yeah, no doubt. Two big road matches in the week to come. Neither is a gimme. Friday evening at 5, the Cougars will play at Kansas, with the Jayhawks coming off a strong weekend on the road in Texas. Last Friday, the Jayhawks went to Fort Worth and handed, at the time, number 19 TCU their first conference loss. Lost 4-1 on Sunday at a ranked Baylor team. No real shame in that one. Against common opponent Colorado, the Jayhawks defeated the Buffaloes 4-0, but were slightly less competitive than the Cougs in a 4-1 home loss to Texas Tech, which opened their Big 12 season back in February. Jayhawks also had some name wins from conference play over at Nebraska and Minnesota, both home matches in Lawrence. I think the biggest one, the biggest part of this one that's going to be a challenge is going to be on the doubles courts and also singles court one, which are related. In their upset win over TCU, the Jayhawks took the doubles point in a match that was ultimately decided by the tightest margin possible. It was a 4-3 win. And on the whole, the Jayhawks have been better in doubles, even against the toughest teams they've seen. For all the crazy improvement this year's U of H team has seen, not a stretch to say they still need to play, I would say, their best doubles this season, not to be from behind like they've been in their conference losses so far. And part of KU's just really fearsome doubles pairings are their court one singles player, Kyoka Kubo, former decorated Japanese junior, one of the top ranked singles players in the Big 12 right now, got another ranked win this past weekend in the Jayhawks win over TCU. Much as Lisa Morsova has been playing good tennis, she has wins in 2 of the last 4 matches on court 1. She's at worst the second or third toughest opponent, probably second, that Lisa has seen this season on the road. That's going to be a challenge. I guess the good news is the Jayhawks aren't nearly as bulletproof in all of the other singles courts. If U of H can go into singles up 1-0, I'm pretty confident that they can find 3 more to take this match. But it's a big thing. Going up 1-0 and winning the doubles point is not going to be very easy. In this one, Kansas will be the 7th ranked opponent the Cougs will see in as many Big 12 matches. The Jayhawks were ranked 48th in this week's ITA rankings. Cougs were 40th, if you wanted an update there as well. There is some good news, Bobby. It does get a little easier on Sunday. The Cougs will face currently winless in Big 12 play Iowa State and Ames. The Cyclones are currently 2-10 overall, have home losses to common opponents Colorado and Texas Tech. They also played common non-conference opponent North Texas and Denton yesterday and lost 4-3. ISU, I will say, did play a tough non-conference schedule for the most part, most of it away from home also in the early season. And however ugly that record is, I still think they might be a better team than West Virginia and Cincy, who we'll see at the end of the season here. But they've struggled a lot. This isn't a team that's comparatively strong in singles and bad in doubles. They've struggled about the same in both. They're a combined 3-14, or they were before the UNT match. They were 3-14 on courts 1 and 2 singles, and the only court where they have a winning record is court 6, where U of H will be running out one of the conference's top players there, the 12-0 Sophie Schouten. Worth a reminder, again, that even the low-end Big 12 tennis teams are capable of beating you on the road, where the Cougs have not, to this point, won a Big 12 match in program history yet, but this should absolutely be that first Big 12 road win in program history. So 2-0 week, definitely possible. And if the Cougs can make it happen before the last really difficult week at the end of March, early April, you're going to be in great shape as we now approach the last few weeks of the regular season.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it.
We'll stick with the country club sports here in the spring. For a minute, we had the return this week of Cougar men's golf in Houston. Women also returning to action in the week to come. We'll discuss all of that in the latest edition of Cougar Golf Corner.
Welcome to the Golf Corner, everybody. The men played in Humble. They actually hosted the All-American Intercollegiate this week. And Sam, when you click on this tournament, one, you will notice No team was even close to par on the week. The winner was number 4 Arkansas at 18 over. But when you click on the tournament, the banner at the top gives you like an announcement. After winds strong enough to close the airport yesterday, calmer and cold for the final round at the golf club of Houston. And that's a perfect way to describe this tournament. You look at the Houston Cougars, who finished 5th in their home tournament. This it's kind of hard to judge how you played in this tournament just based on those conditions. You look at the first round, the lowest score in round 1, Sam, was 10 over as a team by number 4 Arkansas. The next was 14. After the first round, the Cougs were in what place? They were in what appears to be like 7th place. Sorry, I'm doing the counting now. At 25 over. Crazy weather out in Houston. Cougs, like I said, finished 5th. It's hard to judge this tournament based on any scores, or it's kind of like one of those games where it's just hard to take anything out of it. If you played well, you maybe take something from that, but if you don't play well, you just go, how often do you play in wins that are that crazy? Shout out to Chi-Chun Chen, who finished 14th overall in the tournament at +9. Grant Doggett came in at +10 for the tournament. You had Hudson Weibel finished top 30. He finished 30th at 14 over. Kevin On finishes 25 over. Hui Ying Chin finishes 16 over. So it's so tough to just determine this. I don't think you did poorly in this. You look at the scores and you get a little concerned and you go, hey, wait a minute. You finished 31 strokes off the leader. But your next closest was Abilene Christian. I know that doesn't sound good. Abilene has a lot of wind. You would imagine they can practice a little bit more in the wind. Arkansas, Eastern Michigan, Tarleton finished 3rd in this tournament. It was just wild. Something you don't see very often is a mix of divisions here. You did have Odessa playing in this tournament. They're number 2 in their division. Just kind of an interesting little tidbit there. So you did beat a really good Division 2 team. I want to say they are. They might be Division 3.
Aren't they junior? I thought Odessa was junior college. And don't
see.
quote me on this. I think there might be a U of H guy that we both know. Alma mater of one, Devin Davis.
There it is.
Power forward extraordinaire from Samson's first NCAA tournament team. I thought there was a connection there. Sorry.
There you go. No. It is a junior college. I'm sorry. So you did get to play the number 2 junior college team in the country. Not that that's important, just kind of cool that they get to play in a big Division 1 tournament because they're fairly close and you want people to come in. They didn't fare well, right? They finished 15th. They did beat Division 1 Houston Christian
The artist
University,
formerly known as HBU.
Yeah, the artist formerly known
I'm
as
sure
HBU.
a decorated alumnus, Colin Montgomery, was not thrilled about that.
Yeah, so it wasn't a particularly strong tournament that you played in terms of field. You did have, like I said, number 4 Arkansas, who just kind of wiped the floor with everybody. This is kind of one of those, I guess you could say, forgettable tournaments that everybody, you felt like you got beat up in that tournament there. And then the women are headed out to Arizona. They are playing in a tournament hosted by Kansas State. A tournament in Tucson hosted by Kansas State.
I feel like we've played it before, and it's kind of been like, we kind of looked eyebrows raised. Like,
there's always something weird. Like, you have Houston hosting Cabo sometimes, or it's always, golf tournaments are always weird, kind of who they're hosted by. To be honest, not a lot to take away from this tournament, because half the teams don't have the lineup that they're playing, so it's kind of hard to determine who's going to be good. Excuse me, at that tournament. You do play North Texas, you do play Texas Tech. Iowa State is going to be there. Missouri, San Diego State, Wichita State. So K-State's going to be there. So you're going to get a nice little test here for the ladies against some Big 12 competition there as well. The Cougs are currently ranked 30th in the country. That last tournament, I kind of talked about how the result there was probably going to do some good stuff for the Cougs, and it has. As a team, like I said, they have jumped up to 30th in the country, and you have some individuals that are highly ranked as well. So just really looking forward to the upcoming tournaments. You got Big 12 play and the Big 12 tournament coming up here in about a month for the Cougs. And so yeah, the way we thought the season was going to go is kind of how it's going. Like I said, you got Melissa Vinnesgold ranked number 50 in the country. You have Maylin Kim jumping up to number 72 in the country. And then bordering right there on the top 100, you do have Natalie St. Germain at 112. You have a really good team this year. This is a team that probably won't win Big 12s if you're kind of looking at it, but overall hard to complain, and you really hope that this team can get over the hump.
I was gonna say it's gonna be like 100 plus in the area for the women's tournaments. This is where all your training and heat comes in handy, because it's going to be an absolute scorcher down there in the valley.
But hey, man, it's a dry heat.
Yeah, man, you go play like. I mean, it is. This is relatively true. Like, it is more theoretically tolerable to do a round of 18 or insert name of physical activity in 105-degree heat in a desert environment versus like Houston, where it's going to kill you in like a matter of 20 to 30 minutes. So it is actually better, but I think no one will excuse it for a pleasant experience.
Yeah, it won't be.
And we will stay with the spring sports, go to the Diamond next, close out tonight talking about the two bat and ball sports teams, which were both in action against Big 12 opponents last weekend. We'll lead with the baseball team, who went 1-2 against K-State in their conference opening series at home. I'm not inclined to much optimism here, Bobby. So I decided as a challenge, I would go against my natural inclination, not say I'm optimistic about the weekend, but find two things that I'm actually optimistic about coming out of the weekend. Trey Broussard, who got off to an absurdly hot start early this season, missed the last few weeks or so, was back in the lineup for the finale win on Sunday, went 2 for 4 with 2 walks, ended the game with a solo home run that officially ruled K-State during an absolutely absurd 8th inning. Broussard's coming back at a time where the entire lineup around him seems to be hitting better. I mean, to that end, Tyler Cox has had a monster last couple weeks after a pretty slow start to the season. That group of Jackson Lima, Xavier Perez, and Blake Fields have continued well off their strong starts. And in 2 of the 3 games this weekend, 3 of the last 4, if you go the entire week to the midweek win over Rice, your lineup is definitely producing, but not a weekend where I would expect either of us are overflowing with positive things to say about where Cougar baseball is after this one weekend Big 12 series. Bobby, what are your big takeaways from the K-State series?
Yeah, I can't think of many times I've seen 20 runs scored in a baseball game. It doesn't happen very often. I do remember the Rangers did it when I was a kid. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, man, that's tough. That is truly a tough one there. I would say my biggest kind of positive takeaway was Ryan Rodriguez on Sunday gives you 6 innings. Right? Was that a Sunday? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you 6 innings of no earned runs. Gives up 1 unearned run. That's pretty exciting there. You do like that. Unfortunately, it was surrounded by, also still giving up 5 runs from other pitchers. But Ryan Rodriguez giving you 6 innings of 1-run ball is exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad you singled out Ryan Rodriguez, because outstanding, and was outstanding in a game where you finally needed some pitching to step up at some point to get you the win. And some of K-State scoring an absurd number of runs was feasting on the back of the bullpen in games where they already had like big, slightly more reasonable leads in. But 36 runs, 2 run rule losses, you can only spin that so much. And all 3 games this weekend had announced attendances of under 1,000 people. So 400, 500 butts in seats, maybe 100 of those are traveling K-State fans and K-State families of like players and stuff like that. I know they have some Texas guys. They have a guy from my alma mater playing for them as well. It's like that old Bill Clinton quote, Bobby. It's the economy, stupid. It's the pitching, stupid. It's the pitching that continues to be this program's problem this season, but also season in, season out. We're basically at the point now in the current season where there's enough evidence that the Cougs haven't appreciably improved in this area. You've had, over the last several years, individual standouts who are worth highlighting: Antoine Jean, Justin Murray, Rob Gasser, Cade Satele, probably another guy or two I'm forgetting. But I looked this up. You have not had a staff ERA below 5 since before COVID, Bobby. I mean, that's just not good enough. And you've constantly cycled out pitching coaches. Results haven't really improved in any meaningful way. I mean, if it's the opposite scenario and you have good pitching or close to good pitching and maybe a little bit more hit or miss hitting, not that there aren't problems with questionable hitting. I mean, the last team we had here that actually had close to an at-large resume in 2019 largely missed the tournament because they just couldn't hit down the stretch. But you're in a better spot if you have pitching you can rely upon than not. And that just isn't where the Cougs are right now. I mean, K-State's one of the better hitting teams we'll see in Big 12 play, but far from the only team in the conference schedule who could take advantage of poor pitching, which doesn't feel great with most of Big 12 play left to go. I leave this weekend series about as discouraged as I've been about this team's 2026 prospects. More discouraged than I've been at any point during the regular season. And I can't imagine my feelings are that much different than those of us, the few, the proud, who are still paying attention to the baseball program.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted it out. What was that? Saturday night when I was like, man, or Friday night? I can't remember. Friday night, maybe. Yeah, when I was.
It was like they went final on getting run ruled by K-State like right after or right around when U of H basketball finished off KU.
Yeah, and I was like, boy, you gotta imagine. Todd Whitting is very excited that the Cougars were the men's basketball team was playing during this game, because honestly, man, giving up 20 in a baseball game is the kind of thing that gets you fired in the middle of the season. Like, that's the kind of performance. I know we're not going to,
yeah, not this,
but that's the kind of thing that if enough people see it, everyone goes, what the hell's going on? It's like losing by 30 in a basketball game when your season's already going down. It's like, all right, we could just do this now. Like, I know we're not going to, and I'm not advocating for that, but those kind of losses are the type of losses that get you in a lot of trouble and make you not finish out your season when you're already on the hot seat.
You're 100% right. And an athletic department that gives a shit about baseball, which haven't seen any evidence that it describes this current one. Yeah, that kind of thing. Heads roll after that. In this case, I guess it just leads us one step closer to a nicely worded press release in early June
about how we didn't renew. We didn't renew
Todd Whitting.
Yeah.
Or hey, maybe Eddie Nunez has a sequel to Chris Pesman's baffling 2023 summer contract extension. I don't think so, but who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, man, it was bad.
I just want this team to matter so much, man. I'm not like, oh, we need to be top 15 and compete, for super. I just want to be on the fucking bubble, man. I just want to have a team to where I'm like, getting mad at Kendall Rogers for not having us in his D1 baseball field. You know what I mean? Or like, looking at the RPI or.
I just want to be able to, like you said, I'm not asking for us to compete with the SEC. I don't need us to compete with Vanderbilt. I just want to be able to not sigh whenever I see the final score of our baseball game.
And I mean, to call this program, like, had its moments under Rainer Noble, had its moments earlier mid part of last decade under this head coach. Never been like I would say for like a 10-year stretch a power, but has had some really good stretches of baseball. This is going to be almost certainly the longest stretch since like the 60s and 70s, Bobby, that this team hasn't made the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Like, U of H baseball has not generally gone set. I mean, Rainer Noble didn't get brought back after 2 seasons of not making the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be the 7th or 8th.
Yeah. It boils down to the fact that winning can fundraise, and that's clearly something he's done a good job with. But at some point, you're not winning baseball games, and there has to be a
Fundraise a
solution
fucking
to.
staff that has an ERA below 5, please.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's easier said than done. I don't want to be crass. Like, guy's an alum. Guy's been good to us. Guy's done good stuff as a baseball coach here. I'm not going to say nasty things about the guy if or when the school goes in a different direction. But, I mean, it's going on a decade now of this team
yeah,
not mattering.
yeah.
That's a long time.
And it sucks, man.
I have no happy segue out of that. We'll just say up next, the Cougs will host UL Lafayette tomorrow night at Schrader Park for a midweeker. The Raging Cajuns are 15-5 coming into the week, coming off home series win in their Sun Belt opening series against South Alabama. They won a pair of midweekers late last month against common opponent K-State. A couple weeks ago, they beat, at the time, number 2 ranked LSU in Lafayette. Definitely a team that's relied on its pitching to win games, which even in a midweek game where you don't have maybe all your best pitching options available, I think does set up a good strength on strength matchup with Cougar lineup that for any of this team's faults is that's moments hitting pretty well. The main attraction of this coming week will be weekend series on the road, the Cougs' first true road weekend series of the year at Kansas. Last weekend, the Jayhawks lost 2-3 in Lubbock to Tech. Like the Cougs getting hit pretty hard in the first 2 days, but salvaged a Sunday game in run rule fashion on the travel day. Both the Jayhawks pitching staff and lineup, just looking at them to last week's opponent, K-State, probably a cut below what we saw from the Wildcats. But you take a lot of that with a grain of salt, considering they've only played 3 home games, Bobby, this entire season.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty wild. That's a reminder, like, oh yeah, these schools where it actually gets cold can't play baseball for a good chunk of the season. They've hit and pitched for the season, just pure numbers, about the same level as the Cougs. They have some standout hitters, but haven't been a truly lethal lineup top to bottom. Only have 2 regularly used pitchers, neither of whom are starters, with a season ERA under 4. Expect some runs scored this weekend, Bobby. I'm still not wildly confident we get the series win, but I like our chances in it better than K-State.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you can, if you take 2 or 3 here, you kind of move to a new level of maybe they kind of sucker me back into believing they're a bubble team. But I, like you, I don't know how confident I am in that, but I wouldn't mind seeing 2 of 3. I think it's something you can accomplish. I don't know if it's a reasonable thing to expect, but I think if you can come away with 2 or 3 here, you kind of feel like you're getting back on the right track. You know what I mean?
If you can't take 2 or 3 in this one, good luck finishing better than that 12th they had you in the preseason. That's all I'm saying.
And we had kind of talked last week about how this team this weekend versus K-State was going to kind of be one of those, if you want to be better than 12th, prove it. You didn't. So you got another chance to, if you want to be better than 12th, prove it. Don't know how it's going to work, but here's another opportunity for you to do that.
Hope they do. Not expecting they do, but hope they do. We'll close tonight with Cougar softball, who I will note, contrary to what I said in last week's pod, we previewed the series, was not playing this one on the road. A big my bad on that one. That one was very much played at the Cougar softball stadium. We'll start with the positives like baseball. You faced a really good opposing lineup and left the weekend with 1 win to show for it. But I'm also not exaggerating when I say this might have been one of the worst pitching weekends in program history. Like 37 runs would be a crazy amount in baseball, a fairly offense-friendly sport. In softball, it's almost unheard of to allow that many runs in 3 games. You'll probably be able to tell in the way the two of us talked about this as compared to we just got done with baseball. You treat these situations differently because one team has a first-year head coach and the other has a 16th-year head coach. But
Exactly.
This was definitely a weekend that reminded you how far the Cougs are from being where they need to be in the circle. Bobby, your thoughts from the Kansas series?
Yeah, kind of like what you said. You've seen flashes from some of your pitchers this year, especially Nevaeh Brown. You've seen some really good from her, but boy, this weekend she did not have a very good weekend when you kind of look at it. But so you see some flashes, and this year, I don't know, man. Like you said, it's a first year head coach. You see some youth in the circle. You need to get better in the circle, but you can kind of see how it's kind of there with Nevaeh Brown and how she could develop into something. So you look at it a little bit different because you didn't bring in a lot of transfers. You didn't bring in a lot of people who you expected to help you win necessarily this year. So it was a bad week in the circle. One of the worst, like you said, that we've seen in a long time. But again, you feel yourself just kind of the program heading in kind of the right direction more so, and that's kind of what you take away from it. Like you look at the score on the 14th, um the 18-1 game. That really comes down to two innings getting away from you. And like, yeah, you can't let two innings get away from you, right? That is important that you don't do that, but it really feels like this team is they ride the trends of when it's going well, they ride that wave, but when it falls apart hard. And that's something you see with younger teams. So I'm trying not to be overly critical of what I'm seeing from this team because the bats are still swinging. But again, you go through these games and you just look at when did things kind of fall apart. The game you win, you give up 9, but you don't have a big inning in the 6th. They score 4. So maybe that one's big. But then, like I said, in that 18-1 game, you have a 10-run inning and a 6-run inning just gets away from you. And then the 11-8 game, you give up 6 in the 6th inning. You're leading up until that point, or it's tied up until that point, and it just gets away from you a little bit. You make a couple of bad pitches, and suddenly you're down pretty big.
Yeah, I don't want to ignore the Friday night win over the two ones you lost with, I think, poor pitching performances, because that Friday night win was incredible. Scored 4 in the bottom of 7th to stay alive. Maddie Hartley, no surprise, got the Cougar offense going with an RBI single. McKenna Mitchell hit a deep home run to dead center to tie the game at 9, and Mitchell next inning was responsible for the walk-off when she drew a bases loaded walk in the bottom of the 8th to win 10-9. Not the first time this season or the last time we'll see the Cougar hitters demonstrate their late game heroics. One pitching shout out, probably had maybe her worst college weekend, but London Park threw 2 scoreless when you really needed it in that Friday night win, which I appreciate. But I mean, the rest of the weekend just showed that you don't have remotely enough pitching to compete with a good hitting Big 12 team. You had Nevaeh Brown throwing 4 innings of 2-run relief in the Sunday loss. Her Friday start was probably the best start you got from any of your pitchers, but even Brown has a ways to go before she's capable of giving you quality performances against conference opponents. I mean, we're talking about a pitcher who's flashed some good things this year, but she had like 31 innings total in college coming into the season. So a lot of development still to do there, but should be lost on me or you or anyone following this team that your lineup did well in 2 of the 3 games this past weekend. Obviously, it only goes so far when your pitching is going to struggle, but continues to be, I think, an unabashed positive for this team, their ability to hit. Like, is that a sustainable way to build an NCAA tournament team? No, but that wasn't really our expectation coming into this season. I think it was more just see this team play with joy, see this team led by somebody who wasn't the previous head coach. And I think you've seen the hitters develop. Like, you saw a promising lineup last year, largely the same cast of characters hit much better this season. Haven't pitched much better, but I think that's a job for this coming off season. I think this was an evaluation season there. And I think when you have a normal portal cycle to recruit, I think that's what you address in the coming off season. And then hopefully return most of these awesome hitters from there as well.
Yeah, I think you go out, and if you can get a really good pitcher here to come in and kind of supplement Nevaeh Brown, I think you really are cooking with oil here.
No doubt. Cougs did play tonight at home against Texas State, who's had a pretty good start to the season. Lost that one 12-8. And in a lot of ways, really, really kind of summed up your season. The Bobcats got their 12 runs from 2 different, like they had an 8-run second inning and a 4-run 6th inning, and that's how they got all their runs. Still plenty of offensive positives. McKenna Mitchell, 2 different home runs, and there's some Maddie Hartley, a grand slam in the 4th to cut to 8-6. Savannah Luther, fresh off hitting a grand slam, I want to say in the finale against K-State last weekend. Like, she had a double to cut to 12-8 late. So some good hitting, but not nearly enough pitching to beat a quality opponent once again.
Exactly. You guys are gonna hear this a lot from us going forward. The rest of the season is the bats were there. You scored a good amount of points, but the pitching just didn't quite work out for you there.
Yep. So tomorrow, or I guess today, as you're listening, the Cougars will also host Kentucky in the midweek. The Wildcats are 19-9 overall, 1-5 start in SEC play, but did win one of those head-to-heads against Auburn. Have a rough start, like Auburn and Florida. Like that's a pretty
Yeah,
tough way
that's tough.
to get your
That's
conference play
tough.
going. They have a road non-conference win over Stanford as well, but that one's gonna be a challenge. But the main action the coming week will be, and I checked this time for real, your first road Big 12 series of the year against Iowa State. This will actually be the Cyclones' first home games of the season, which again, I get it. They're in Iowa. Like before mid-March, it's probably very dicey if it's going to be both warm enough and then not snowy on the ground enough to play softball, but that's wild. And so I think considering they haven't played a single home game at this point, respectable 15-10, did get swept in their Big 12 series opener at Baylor. I think if the Cougs can hit well away from home, some chance you could take 2 of 3, but with your pitching right now, I'm not taking that as a given against any Big 12 opponent just yet.
Yeah, just you hope to see it against some good bats. You hope to see a couple of good pitching performances. But again, just like I said with the previous games, is you're really just trying to see what you have for the next year. You want to be competitive in these games. And again, we talked about this with soccer and with tennis last year. You just want to be more competitive than you were the year before with a new coaching staff. And to be honest, man, you it feels like you've been a little bit more competitive against teams this year. Your games have been a little bit closer this year than they have the previous year. So overall, fairly happy. Couple of little fun things that I noticed in the schedule here, Sam, that I'm just bringing up. I thought it was weird that we played back-to-back midweek games. Do you know why Kentucky would agree to play us in a midweek game right after we
I mean,
played another one?
I assume they're playing
They're
A&M.
playing at A&M, and so it always cracks me up, like little scheduling things like that, especially since expansion really happened. They're like, well, let's get a game in. We're playing A&M. Let's travel down there, and do
Yeah,
you guys mind? Let's play a game real quick.
we're randomly playing Missouri State in tennis during
Yeah,
conference season because I believe they're playing at Sam like
yeah.
that weekend or something.
It just kind of makes me laugh and things like that. And then funny thing, another just little quirk of softball. You mentioned how this is Iowa State's like first real is their first home game, and they've been playing down south because it gets cold. Did you know they played a tournament in Minnesota?
Oh yeah, at the
At
Twin
the
Stadium,
at
right? Yeah.
no, at the Viking Stadium, US Bank.
Oh, that's right.
And so it's
That's right.
indoor on the football field, and they have the temporary fence. Just kind of funny to go back and look at some pictures of it, because I was just curious what that would look like. Kind of cool, definitely unique. So, just Cougar fans, if you're wondering what indoor softball looks like, and it's even called the Gopher Indoor Classic. Just kind of weird that they played indoors.
That's cool, Sal. I
Yeah,
hope
just
I know we're
something
not
cool.
going to do it because we are
We
hosting
host
like
all
that
the
time
cold
of year,
schools.
but cool thing.
Yeah, just kind of one of those cool things to see your team do once or twice.
All right, buddy, take us home.
All right, man, that's almost 2 hours of Cougar talk. I gotta go to bed. Actually, no, I don't. I'm off tomorrow. But if you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. You can find us on social media. You can send us a tweet at SH Podcast. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. And if you've sworn off social media and you want to talk to us, you can send us an email at shpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to throw some money behind us and have us really listen to you, or if you want to give us more than $5 a month, we will take it. If you want to give us $1 million a month, we will quit our jobs. I don't want to speak for Sam, but I can speak for Sam.
Yeah, $1 million a month. Yeah, I'm quitting my job.
Yeah. Me
Sorry,
too, bud.
job.
Yeah. And my job knows I love my job, but if you want to throw some money behind us, get some premium content, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/SH podcast. And for anyone who is a first time listener, because it's March Madness season and you are finally listening to us, we appreciate you. That is podcast PAWDCAST, because it is a Cougar Paw. PAW, you guys get it. I don't need to explain it much more than that. So, Sam, what do we always say at the end of our podcast, bud?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!